Hey, everybody, it's Ken McElroy, and of course, I've got my great friend here, Kim
I'm
Kiyosaki.
so happy to be here. This is so fun.
Kim, thanks again.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's the best. So, obviously, you guys know Kim through Rich Woman, Kim Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. We've been all over the world together. We've had a lot of fun.
We've had a lot of fun.
I know.
Traveled to a lot of cities.
Oh, my gosh.
Talked to a lot of people.
So, Kim, I know when we talk, there's people from all ranges, right? And can you just talk a little bit about, a lot of people, I think, have a tough time just getting started.
Yeah.
Just that one thing, just focus on one small thing. I always tell somebody, just have one goal. I love yours, which was one house, right, in Portland.
Right.
Can you just talk through that? Because I think sometimes people look at you or Robert or even me and they go, wow, there's, it seems so far away, but they don't understand we all started
very small.
With the same fear.
Yeah. Oh, lots of fear. I knew nothing about real estate. I knew nothing about cash flow. I had only been raised probably similar to most people. You hear about the stock market a little bit, and I didn't understand that. But all it was like save your money and put it in a 401k. And so I had no idea about real estate. And Robert one day started explaining what his rich dad had taught him about real estate and cash flowing real estate. And he goes, yeah, go see what you can find. And I'm like, yeah, right. Go see what you can. I have no idea what I'm doing out here. But I was basically just drove around and I'd see a sign, like a for sale sign, and I'd call the broker and even doing that, because I wasn't quite sure what questions to ask.
Anxiety.
Yeah. It's like, okay, is this like a rental neighborhood or is it no? And some people say no, they don't want they don't want rental people here, and that was a big lesson because I did buy one property that the owners did not want renters in their community.
Okay.
But I was scared to death. I'm like, I found this little 2-bedroom, 1-bath house. It was literally a 10-minute walk from my house where I lived. And I didn't know what I was doing. And sometimes ignorance is bliss. And it was $45,000. I had to put $5,000 down, of which we did not have. And I had all the fear of, what if the roof leaks? What if I make a mistake? What if I lose money? What if this? What if that? And I literally was looking for a reason why not to do this deal. That I wanted something to come up that said, no, this is not going to work. You can't do it, because that would have been so much easier.
And that's actually pretty common at this point.
Yeah.
To look for reasons not to and have that anxiety on just the phone call and feeling stupid by picking up the phone and asking somebody a question that you don't know the answer to.
Right.
Those are all very common.
They're really common. And it wasn't just the first property. It was there with the second and the third and the fourth. And it took a while. With every property I bought, there'd be a little less anxiety. But it was, you never know exactly what you're buying, ever. You do your due diligence and you follow up with it. But that little house, I finally did cross the line. But to your point, it's easier not to do the deal.
Yeah.
In the short term, but it becomes harder in the long term.
Agreed.
Right.
Yeah. Yes. I always tell people it's almost like starting a new job.
Yeah.
Not knowing what the culture is, not really knowing what you're supposed to be doing, not knowing who your supervisors are and all those things. And, and when you sit down and talk to somebody for the first time, you don't know what they're even like.
Right.
And so it's kind of like that.
Yeah. You're becoming a beginner again. You got to be a beginner.
Yes.
And I kind of felt that way on most of the deals I did. So that little 2-bedroom, 1-bath house, I finally did the deal. I finally crossed the line, and I'm like, okay, we'll see what we have here. And I would collect the rent, and I'd pay the mortgage, and I'd pay the expenses, and at the end of every month, I had $25 in my pocket, and that's how I started.
The key, too, by the way, cash flow.
Cash flow, yes.
Making sure that you have enough rent to cover the expenses.
And then I made the classic mistake. When the renter did move out, I thought, oh, great, I can raise the rent. So I raised the rent without understanding what the market wanted and what was just what the rents should be. So I raised the rent, and the house sat empty for 3 months.
Yeah.
Because I raised it too much.
Yep.
And then I'm negative cash flow now because I got to pay the mortgage and pay all the expenses without the rent coming in. So a lot of lessons. I mean, one of the great things about investing in real estate is the lessons you learn along the way. They're
Right.
not just real estate lessons, they're life lessons.
They are. They
Yeah.
are. There's a lot of human behavior and a lot of relationship things
Yep.
and just follow up on basic things
Yep.
and, accounting.
Yeah. Well, that's
that I hated.
and to that point, I wasn't very good at that. But to that point, every property we buy is a business.
Yes.
It's not a hobby. It's a business, and you got to treat every single property, whether it's a single-family house, whether it's a fourplex, whether it's 100 units. You got to treat it as a business.
Yes. Well, that's what I loved in the Rich Dad book, as you know, is I don't know if I actually ever told you the story, but when I was raising money and my
I remember
buddies
the first deal you did to raise money, and you came knocking on our door.
I did.
Yes, you
I did. I was like-
you and Ross had your whole show ready to go.
I
I
know.
loved it.
Well, I remember because our friend set up the meeting with you guys down
Yep.
at Phoenix Country Club,
Yep.
which is right here in Arizona, which was just completely awesome. And I remember he's like, they just released this book, Rich Dad Poor Dad. So I ran to the bookstore and I read it in one night.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know
and
that.
I was like, so I had
That's
two
funny.
things. I was like, okay, one, yeah, obviously you love property management,
Yes, we do.
and two, you love cash flow. So that's kind of how I focused the meeting. But honestly, to this day, it's one of the only books that I know of that actually praises property management. And that's kind of what we're talking about.
Oh, that's the key.
Because you can buy things. People buy things or they invest in things, they're like, okay, we can walk away now like a stock.
No,
I know.
no. Matter of fact, to that point, the first few properties I bought, then we bought like a sixplex and a 12 unit apartment building, and Robert and I were traveling like 80% of the year. So I hired in Portland, Oregon, a management company, not knowing, I didn't know property management. And so not knowing it, they kind of had free reign and they didn't manage it them very well. And we lost a lot. I'd not say we lost money, but we didn't make nearly as much money as we could have made
Right.
with them. Then when we sold everything in Portland and moved all the money to buy properties in Phoenix, I was very lucky because on 2 properties, I inherited the on-site property managers. And they taught me
Yes.
property management.
Yep.
It's not something I learned from a book. I went there every day with them. They were teaching me how to run the property, how to scale it, what expenses, how you can, all of the
Screening tenants. how to turn
tenants, all of
units,
that,
and-
evicting
yeah.
tenants,
Yes,
all of that.
stuff.
Yep. But I learned it from them.
Yeah, of course you did.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
like a lot of us, that's how I learned. And so now, obviously, we've known each other for over 20 years.
Yes,
and
it's amazing,
you guys
huh?
have, been. Just
We still have the first property we did together.
we do.
Yes.
I
And it's
know.
still doing well.
It is.
Yep.
And you guys have been huge advocates of our company.
Yeah, well,
MC Companies.
we are.
Thank you. Can you talk a little bit about that experience
Yeah.
with our company?
Yeah. Well, when I remember the first time you and Ross came and you pitched the deal in Tucson, and of course this was your first development you had done,
Right.
And it was bigger and better than any of us imagined. And the one thing I say about your company, Kenny, is you and Ross and your team, you always underpromise and you overdeliver every time. And we have done phenomenally well on every single property we have invested with you. We've done great on. And we have the formula that we love where you buy the building and rehab it and refinance it. And a lot of the properties we own with you, we now have no money in the deals anymore because you've returned all the money to us, but we still have the property and we still have the cash flow.
Right.
And plus, you're good guys. I like having dinner with you. I like going out to lunch with you. I love being your friend. But no, you have a phenomenal team around you, and you know that.
Yes. They make us all look amazing.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know. Of course, we have the management and the construction, and we do all that in house. But the
And you're always learning, and you're always looking for the next opportunity, and you never sit back and go, "Oh, we've got this covered," because
Right.
the market's always changing, and you always seem to be a step ahead.
well, it's interesting. So Ross and I, we just put all our stuff together. We personally, you and I and Robert, we own hundreds of millions of dollars
Yeah,
worth of real
yeah.
estate with no equity in
Yeah.
it.
Yes,
People don't
that's
realize
amazing.
that. We have millions of dollars a month coming out in cash flow.
And that's the beauty of the formula is that we get our money back and then we reinvest it into the next property.
Yeah, that's
and
the best part.
Yeah, it's
People don't realize.
self-generating.
I know. It's like first I get their cash and then I give it back to them. And they say, "Okay, let's do that again."
Yeah.
Right? And
Well,
it just keeps going.
And that was kind of a joke we had with you originally when you would give our money back, and we're like, well, we don't want it.
Yeah.
Where's the next deal?
That's the best part.
Where's
Oh,
the next
by the
deal?
way, I think I have one. So, right?
Yep. Well, that's a true investor. They don't really want the cash. They want the cash flow, but they always want the next deal. They want to be invested in the next deal.
Well, I think sometimes people don't realize, because as you know, when we get into some of these talks and go on the road, and a lot of these people are kind of flippers or they're kind of
Yeah.
capital gain
Yeah.
people.
Yes.
They don't realize the tax benefits and the cash flow. We get massive cash flow with no tax.
Right. Right.
You
Where the
know-
flippers are paying a lot of tax.
A lot of tax.
Yeah.
Well, they're paying commissions and they're paying capital gains and depreciation
Yep.
recapture.
And
all
they're
those
only
things.
as good as their next deal.
Correct. Right. So they have to time the market and stop,
Yeah.
which is
I mean,
super
you know how hard it is to find a good property. If you find it, why would you want to sell it?
Well, that's the thing. As you know, we just sold $300
That
million
was-
worth of stuff,
which is rare for you guys.
which is really rare.
But you did it because you said they were like these were your bottom performers.
They were.
Right?
They were. We sold them for an average of 4.4 cap. For those of you who don't know what that is, it's a capitalization rate. It's the difference between net operating income and price. And so we went back and we calculated, because we have our investor event next week, right, with all our investors, and I can't wait for you to come.
Oh, I'm excited. I'm excited.
We calculated if we would have waited and sold them at a 6 cap, then we would have lost $47 million
wow.
just from that
Wow.
small 1.6% difference.
Wow. Okay, so here's what else I love about your company. You don't want to just take people's money,
Right.
right? You want them to understand what you do, where it is. That's why you have your investor summit.
Correct.
You educate people because we've had this discussion where a lot of people, especially very successful people, a lot of them have no idea
Yeah.
when it comes to investing, no idea what a good real estate deal is or how it works. So that's one of the keys, I think, to your success is that you're educating your investors along the way.
Well, I want to. And what was happening is when we put out the business plans, people would call, but only about 20%. The rest would just give us money. And I was always confused by that. And I was like, you would call, obviously, we would sit down and go over the deal, but the majority of people just wire the money in. And it was always surprising to me. It's great to have that money,
Yeah,
don't get me
right.
wrong, but I was always surprised. And so then we started doing these investor summits, and I realized, so as you know, we have about 1,200 accredited investors, and they're all wealthy financially. Obviously, to be accredited, you have to have $1 million, over $1 million in net worth. But I'm dumbfounded with how little they know about where their money's going. So in other words, they're very good at what they do,
Right.
whatever they do, a doctor, employer, an employee, an entrepreneur, or whatever it is. They own a business and they're very good at that. But then they turn it over to these people.
This is what I don't understand.
Yeah.
I mean, this just blows me away. There's such smart people, such successful business people, and you work so hard for this money. And why would you not take that same energy that you took to build your business to understand what you've got?
I'm dumbfounded. I don't understand why people do that with financial planners.
Yeah.
Okay, there's nothing wrong with
blindly
financial
turn their
planners.
money over.
But, I fell into that. I mean, I was putting money away usually through the only job I ever had, and I would meet with the guy once a year, right?
Yeah.
And maybe.
And that's unusual even once a year.
Yeah, and I would meet with them, and I wouldn't understand a thing that they said. Oh, we put you here, we put you in these positions, and I would go, okay, great, and then I would leave, and I never connected it. I was like, why would I work so hard and then just turn it over and
Yeah.
not really understand where my money is, and then hope at some point that it's there?
That hope they did a good job and really are looking out for your best interests, which you don't know. But I got a funny story. You'll
Yeah.
love this. So my friend Melissa is our producer for our
I
Rich
know
Dad radio
Melissa.
show,
Yeah.
right? So she's listening to us and she realizes she's got this portfolio and this money manager, and she's never really had a discussion with him about what she's got.
Oh my gosh.
So she goes into his office and she says, I don't understand. At the top of the market where everything's booming, I'm losing money. And he had put her into this formula that made absolutely no sense with bonds and things. And she's like, what can we do? And he goes, I don't really think there's anything we can do. I think we should just stay the course. Just stay the course. Basically, he's basically saying, I'm too lazy to do anything different. And so I don't know what to do. She's like, there's got to be something. And he's like, no, there really isn't anything you can do. And as she's getting up to leave, he says, oh, Melissa, there is one thing you could do. There is. And she's like, finally, yes, let's figure this out. What can I do? Well, you could marry a rich man.
No.
He said this to her.
Oh my gosh.
And now we know Melissa. She's pretty tough and feisty. So she turns to this guy and goes, you are so fired right now. I'm done. And she walked
Good
out the
for
door.
her.
Yeah. So now she's learning what she's got. She's now getting into the world of investing. She's taking control of her financial
Good for
life and
her.
not just turning it over to some money manager.
Thank you for
Yeah.
that story.
Yeah.
'Cause you know what? That's a pretty common story.
Yeah.
Most of the time, however, they're not that exposed.
Right.
In other words, usually, I mean, I even did this. I said, okay, great. Well, see you in a year. You know what I mean? And that's kind of what happens with a lot of people is to see you in a year. And so on my high net worth people, that's what they do. They throw money at us like crazy, and they trust us, which is awesome. But really, I want them to understand it. I really do.
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, our friend John McGregor, who's a financial planner, he says that people come in, they have a meeting with him, and he sets up a whole plan, and this is what we're going to do. And he really is along the lines of a rich dad planner. I mean, he
John's the best.
Yeah, he takes our philosophy and uses it and implements it. But he says 9 out of 10 of those people that come in, they walk out of his office and he never sees them again.
Wow.
They just say, okay, do it. And then they never follow up. They
Yeah.
don't put a plan together.
So that's the issue. It's just pure laziness.
Yeah, I think so.
The other thing that John told me, this was interesting because we were together a couple of weeks ago, all together. And he's like, he goes, I went to one of my competitors. And I go, oh, how'd that go? He's like, oh, it was unbelievable. They have, the big ads in the paper or the big ads on the radio or whatever, they see so-and-so, come listen to this person, learn about your state, how to pay no tax or whatever it is. So he went. He just said, I sat in the back of the room. And he said, incredible presentation and PowerPoints and all that kind of stuff. But he said, something was off a little bit. And so he said at the end, so I waited around and I went up to the guy that was speaking at the end and I said, hey, when you were talking about these things, I didn't quite understand it. And the guy goes, don't tell anybody, but I'm just a paid actor.
You're kidding.
No.
He's an actor.
Paid actor.
He was not a financial
Not
guy.
a financial.
That's like that TV ad.
The entire
Oh my
job
gosh.
was to get people to go, to go click on this
Yep.
website, take their information. You know what I mean? So the financial planner, they weren't even there. It was literally a paid actor.
Oh my
So he
gosh.
told me this story.
That's
I was
amazing.
like, "Are you kidding me?" He's like, "Ken, it's just a machine.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
a machine to try to get people to move their assets to wherever." Not to say that because John's very good at what he does.
Yes, he is.
But he's like, my industry needs a lot of help.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. He has a great exercise that he has some of his clients do if they're willing to do it. And he says, if you keep doing what you're doing financially, when you retire, you're going to live on, whatever it is, like $6 a day. That's all you're going to have. He goes, so for a week, just
Try that.
try that. $6 a day. That's all you get.
Oh my gosh.
And if they do it, I don't know how many people actually do it, but that
Right.
would be an eye opener.
My God, my
Yeah.
Starbucks is more than that. That'd be super hard.
Starbucks got expensive. I just had one the other day.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But that's why I think that's one of the biggest pluses that you offer is that you don't just want to take people's money. You want to educate people onto what you're doing, how it works. Because if they're more educated, that only makes your job easier.
Well,
right?
I actually love it. I think there's a misconception that once you have money, you're educated.
Yeah.
Around
about
money.
About money, yes.
It's not true.
Uh-uh.
It's not true at all. And that's why this podcast and this, we're rolling out this education platform for the high net worth and the accrediteds. It's super important.
Yeah. Well, I teach women-only seminars with my girlfriends, and we were in Kiev in Ukraine and in Moscow. And these women were powerhouses. I mean, especially Moscow. Oh my goodness, they are successful entrepreneurial women building incredible businesses. But to your point, when we talked about finance and income, expense, asset, liability, they had no idea.
Yeah.
They had no idea.
It's a worldwide issue.
Yeah, it is. It is. And it's not just women, of course, but it's another example of successful people who just don't know what to do with their money, and they put it in a savings account.
They do. So on to that. I know you got a tour coming up.
Yes, I do.
Very exciting
Yes,
tour.
I'm very
Let's
excited.
talk about that.
Well, I have 3 girlfriends. We're all entrepreneurs. 3 of us are investors. And so we do women-only events. There's usually around 800 to 1,800 women per event. And last year, as I said, we did Ukraine and Moscow. And this year, we're going to do London and India and Singapore. And then I'll go on to do Mexico and Peru. And it's all the same mission, to educate women, to start really getting them to start taking control of their money. Because money is, especially for women, it either can enslave you or it can set you free. And we both know a lot of women in bad marriages or in horrible jobs, and men too, that they hate, but they're afraid, especially for women, to leave because they don't think out of a bad marriage they can take care of themselves financially.
They don't even talk about it.
No, they don't talk about it.
That's the worst
No,
part.
you're absolutely right. They only talk about it when there's a problem.
Right? I mean, it's horrible, right?
they don't
They don't
talk-
talk about before they get married.
No,
They don't talk
no.
about when they're married.
No.
But they do talk about it after.
When they're divorced, there's a lot of discussion.
Lots of discussion. I know.
It's all about the money then.
I know.
Oh, my
It
gosh.
is interesting
Yeah.
to me.
Yeah.
You know, it's so simple.
Yeah.
If you can become super educated, trust me, you definitely have a competitive advantage.
Yeah. Oh,
With
absolutely.
in a lot of situations, you know,
Yeah.
just on your own.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, absolutely. I was just going to say that when Robert and I first got together, we did this little exercise and we wrote down what our 10 values were, and then we had what we thought each other's other values were, and on both of ours had money. And for me, when we had a discussion about it, and so I had to look at why did I put money? I thought that was interesting that I put that as a value, but it wasn't money for money's sake. What was most important to me was the freedom of not having to worry about money. That was always my goal. I didn't want to have to worry about paying bills and worry, did I have enough money here? My goal was to have the freedom to do what I wanted. And if you don't have the financial freedom, you don't have the freedom.
Correct.
So that was my real reason why I wanted to learn about investing and get financially free, because I hate worrying about money.
Out of that collaboration came the cash flow game.
Yes. Yep. That was our very first product, was a cash flow
Incredible
game. And
it changed my kids' lives.
oh, that's so great to hear.
I mean,
that's so great to hear.
I'm sure you heard this a lot, but I don't think I told you, but both my kids were average students at best. But
Well,
honestly,
like fatherly.
yeah, thank you. It's true. But when it came to the finance class and accounting class, and they were talking about like entrepreneurship and business, they were like, oh yeah. They would come home and go, hey, like we're talking about assets and liabilities, and I was teaching kids what they were because they grew up playing the cash flow
Yeah,
game.
and they had their own businesses.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
that was the first product we created, and we created it because we became financially free. And people thought, oh, you must have millions of dollars if you're financially free. And we're like, nope, we got $10,000 a month from our real estate, cash flow, every month coming in, and we have $3,000 in expenses. So at that point, we're financially free. And to your point about your kids, so our other friends, Josh and Lisa.
Yes.
So their kid, what's his name? Zach? No. Anyhow, you will edit that out. But their son has played the cash flow game all along. And so they had a 2-week financial education for 2 weeks at his school in Texas. And the teacher gets up and starts talking about assets and liabilities. And he raises his hand and says, that's not right.
I remember him telling me that.
Yeah, this is
He
like
corrected the
like a
teacher.
13-year-old. That's not what an asset is. An asset is something that puts money in your pocket whether you work or not. And a liability is something that takes money out of your pocket. So your house is not an asset.
Right.
And the teacher was like dumbfounded. She didn't know what to do. And she actually, I think she just kind of shut up.
Well, I remember she challenged him a couple of times, and then
Yeah.
he pulled a couple more things
Yeah,
out, and then
yeah.
she just basically shut it
Yeah.
down. I know.
And then afterwards, I found out there was a couple of kids that went up to him and said, hey, would you teach us what you know?
Yeah.
So he's going to start teaching the kids at his school.
Yeah, well, that happened with my son Kyle. As you know, the kids came up to him and said, "Hey, tell me about how you started a business." And because there's nothing more empowering than a kid making their own money.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
honestly.
And kids. I mean, I started with a job because I wanted my own money. You know, in high school, I'm like, I need my own money. I don't want to depend upon somebody else. I didn't want to depend upon mom and dad. I went to college where I knew that I didn't have to pay tuition. Back then, there was such a thing as no tuition schools, and got a job so they didn't have to support me. And yeah.
I'll tell you two funny stories before we end. Well, first one is my son Kyle, who you know very well, decided to syndicate fake IDs.
Oh no.
Oh yeah.
Oh, no.
Well, this came back and bit him in the butt
Oh,
later.
no.
But he's like, hey, it was like they were expensive because to get good ones, I guess, on the internet. I don't even know how it works. So he ended up. He's like, yeah, I had to get 12 people to buy them so I could have a free one. So I'm like, oh my gosh, Kyle, you syndicated fake IDs. Like, yeah, I didn't know anything. I didn't know about this. There's a whole backstory on that later. But my son Cade came home with this new knife. And he's like, check this out. I go, Cade, where'd you get the money to buy this knife? He goes, well, it's no problem. He goes, I wanted one, so I bought 4 and sold the other 3 for the price of the 4.
Wow.
I go, really? So
Wow.
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's just the way they think.
That thinking is amazing.
It's just the way they think. So instead of coming to me for money,
Yep.
he just did it. He's like, yeah, I sold the other 3
Jeez.
before I bought them. So I just,
So he already sold them before he bought them, so
Yeah.
he knew he was going to have the
Correct.
cash.
Yeah, he's like, he
Gosh.
called up his buddies
Now,
and
how
said,
many
hey, if
kids think like that? How many adults think
it was
like that?
unbelievable,
Yeah.
right? And I was like, so he goes, so I got a free knife. And honestly, this is all we teach.
Yeah.
Is
Yep.
thinking that way. There is a possibility to buy real estate, to have a massive cash flow, and just with the way you think, it all
Yeah.
starts in the mind.
Yep, and it does start in the mind. And really, what we're teaching is for people to be personally responsible for their financial lives. And because I think that's what's part of the big problem with the world right now is everybody's depending on the government, and people don't want to work or they don't want to think differently. But if you can take responsibility for your own financial life and not depend upon the government to take care of you or your employer to take care of you, I mean, how powerful would that be?
It's the
That's
best.
why we do what we do.
Well, Kim, thank you for
Thank you,
continuing
Kenny.
to change lives.
Thank
I love
you.
you.
Love you too.
Yeah,
thank you for
very,
the work
very
you
much.
do.
You too.
Amazing.